Okay, so we're going to talk about sound. But first, it's going to be a pretty quick delving into the history of sound. But sound's been a part of theater for a while, like since the beginning of theater at all. But in terms of design, sound is still relatively new. Thousands of years, we were just having to do live music, live sound effects. That was really difficult. People did not like doing that. So, it's really great that we don't have to anymore. Um, and the Greeks, it is evident they had some understanding of how sound traveled based on the way that the amphitheaters were built. So that's actually really interesting. It means that in history, like when historians are studying ancient Greece, they can tell that the Greeks understood how sound moved because of the way that their theaters were built. They were built in dome shapes that made it so that they were the most acoustically sound, and that way that the sound would be able to travel very well. So sound cues were performed by dedicated crew members backstage that used dedicated machines that created the effects. And we'll talk more about those machines later. So continuing on with that history of sound, with the invention of the phonograph, suddenly we were able to record sound. So that meant that the people didn't have to be backstage doing their machines the whole time. They could just use a pre-recorded version of the sound. Early examples of that were shown in the 1800s for different theatrical productions back then. But designing that recorded sound, so making sure that all of the sounds are put in the right place, that they mesh well with the show, that didn't really start to happen until the 1950s. And that was when we started transitioning from silent films to films with sound. So now we're going to talk a little bit about sound design now. Hashtag Tony, can you hear me? Happened a couple years ago. You might have heard of it or you might have not, depending on how caught up you are in the musical theater world. But in recent decades, the role of a sound designer has started to get significantly bigger, and they're finally starting to get recognized for all of the hard work that they do. But the Tony Awards, which are the big awards that happen every year for Broadway theater, that's plays and musicals, they didn't recognize sound design as an official department until 2007 and 2008. And that was when they first presented the Tony Award for Best Sound Design of a Play and Best Sound Design of a Musical. But then they got rid of them again in 2014 because they were like, oh, we don't need these. It's fine. So then the hashtag Tony, can you hear me was a big social media push from actors and technicians in professional theater to get it reinstated. And they brought back the Tony Award for Sound Design in 2017. So types of sound design. For plays, sound designers will choose music and sometimes even compose music for the show. Don't worry, if you are designing sound at Lowell, we do not have you compose music. That's really difficult. We don't expect you to know how to do that. But you will be able to choose music and figure out which music kind of goes well with which scene, as long as it's relatively quiet to make sure that you don't overpower the actors, because obviously it's a play, not a musical, meaning that the actors are the main focus. They have to be acting, they have to be saying their stuff. You can't have the music be louder than them. You're also in charge of creating the soundscape, which is sound effects. So, like rushing wind, other stuff like that. You need to be very careful because if you have them like walking through an ominous forest, you want something, dark and looming and scary as you kind of your soundscape. You don't want, like a clown noise, da, 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 da. Like you don't want that. That's a bad choice for creating the soundscape for that scene. So you need to make sure that your sounds that are going in there help to add to the effect of the scene and not just take it away or change it in some way. For musicals, it's very different. Music is already chosen because obviously it's a musical. The whole point of the musical is that there is music. So the designers instead focus on reinforcing and balancing the sound so the audience can hear everyone. So this means that there are usually, not at Lowell, but usually there are mic'd musicians. So that means that we put a microphone next to the band or the orchestra that's playing. And then that band or orchestra can be heard in the same way as the actors. So the sound designer then figures out the way to make it so that the band is not louder than the actors. So they have different sliders and faders and other things that make it so that you can hear the actors over the music, get a nice blend of sounds going on. And in musicals, they also work on mic placement, audio mixing, sound effects, and other sound aspects. So that would be the soundscape again. Just because they're not seriously acting in a play doesn't mean that there's not lots of different sound effects that have to go on. So if they're, again, walking through an ominous forest, you want to make sure that they have an ominous forest sound. You're also mixing the sound, as I said before, with the nice blend. You want to be able to hear everything. And mic placement, this is a big issue. We've had this issue at Lowell a couple of times, and we've had to figure it out kind of around the time of the show. But essentially, the actors pin their mics here, or they bring them through their hair, or they pin them up in their cheek. And occasionally something will hit the mic, or it will be like bouncing when they move, and that creates a really weird sound. It's feedback, or it just goes thump, 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 really loud. You don't want that. So we are, as sound designers, you're going to be working on making sure that those mics are in the correct place to get the best sound. I told you we would come back to these machines. So Foley was the original sound design. All sounds are performed live with tools such as the rumble cart, which is basically a big cart that you go. A wind machine, which is self-explanatory. Crashbox, also self-explanatory. Thunder sheet, cannonballs, coconuts, slapstick, mini door, gravel, many, many more. If you look at the picture behind it, that is a Foley studio, so that you have so many different tools that you can use to make all the different sounds you might need for a show. While it's fun to do Foley, it's really cool to figure out which things can produce which sounds and all that other stuff. It's really good that we don't use it anymore, because that's a long time. Like, it takes a really long time to get everything to work, to figure out what you want to do. So overall, while Foley is fun, we don't tend to use Foley anymore, and it's good that we don't. So I'm now going to talk about the qualities of sound. This is where we get a little bit more technical. So sound intensity is volume. That's the amount of sound energy that's being put out, and that's measured in decibels. So if you look on the right, this is a chart that shows kind of the level of decibels. So at like a quiet office or classroom, you're at 40 decibels. So that's kind of what it normally is. A rock concert, an ambulance siren, that kind of thing, that's at 120. The closer you get to it without earplugs, it actually can become quite dangerous. So you want to make sure that your intensity is, depending on the scene, you need to make sure that that intensity matches the scene, but never goes that high, because it could seriously hurt an audience member that's sitting next to a speaker. So just be aware of that. The intensity needs to be well calculated. Frequency and pitch. It's not that kind of pitch. That's very different. Pitch is what a tone or a note is. So, like a low pitch or a high pitch. That's measured in hertz. Ultrasonic is when it's above the human hearing ability, which means it's too high and no one can hear it. Subsonic is below the human hearing ability, which means it's too low and no one can hear it. The range of human hearing is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That's for, in general, adults, like middle-aged adults, from about 20 to, I think, like 75. But the older you get, the less you can hear. So that range shrinks, and the younger you get, that range grows. So like children are much more perceptible of ultrasonic sounds. So like we are more likely to be able to hear a high pitched sound than our parents are. Quality or timbre, that is the combination of sound qualities that allows you to distinguish between sounds. So for example, the difference between a cello and a guitar, it's basically the quality within the sound that allows you to go, oh, that's not, a trumpet. That's someone moving a book. It's just the ability to differentiate between sounds comes within a timbre. Direction and distance. So that's, where's the sound coming from? How far is it? And they're directly tied to intensity. So for example, if I'm standing here and that house on the screen is that far away, if I shout really loud, everyone in the house is only going to be able to hear it like I'm whispering. So if you're on the stage, you want to make sure that if someone is supposed to be really far away from another person, that, really far away from a source of sound, that sound is quiet. Even if it's like a loud siren or a rocket launch or something that is normally loud, if they're far away from it and just hearing it, then you need to make sure that it's relatively quiet. Form and reverb, that's the amount of echo that there is. So it also lets the audience know where they are. For example, if we have a really low budget set and we can't do a thing where we really have that much of a set piece to change out and show people where they are, the things that help are sound and lighting. So if it's really dark on the stage and then all of the sounds are echoing, then the audience is like, oh, we're in a cave. They understand that they're in some sort of cave or long hallway or something. Whereas if it's really bright and there's almost no echo, then they can know that they're outside in some sort of like field or meadow. So those two things work really well together to just kind of let the audience know what the location is. But what kind of equipment do we use to get all of this sound? So we mainly use cables, XLR cables, which are the ones on the top. Those are the most common type of audio cable. It has the connector is circular, it has 3 pins. That's how we connect most of our audio equipment to other audio equipment. The only time we use speak-on cables, which is the other type of sound equipment, is that's to connect speakers to amplifiers. And we'll talk more about the two things, speakers and amplifiers, in a second. So yes, speakers, that converts audio signals into sound the audience can hear. So I know you're thinking, oh yeah, that speakers, like that just projects the sound out. Actually, no. So when an actor speaks into a microphone, it creates a little signal, a little electronic signal that gets transmitted either by wire or by Bluetooth to a speaker. And that speaker is able to sense that signal and then turn it back into audible sound. So essentially, the person speaks, and then it gets transmitted into a digital form, and then the digital form of that sound gets transformed back into something audible for the audience, and that's what speakers do. Amplifiers are used to increase amplitude or power. So, for example, if you're able to connect a speaker and an amplifier, you can then adjust the amount of power that's coming out of the speaker, because speakers in general don't have the ability to control their own volume and their own power. So that just allows you to increase the amount of power that's being put into a speaker. Microphones, those are wired mics and wireless mics. I'll walk you through each of these. So this over here, that's a handheld wired mic. You've seen those all the time, I'm certain. So those are just the ones where you hold, you speak into it, it has a wire that connects itself to the speaker. Floor mics are a little less common. I don't believe we have any at Lowell. We might have like 1 or 2, but I've never seen us use them. Essentially, it's to catch any sort of sound that's coming from the actors if you don't want to mic them like this. These are less common. You don't see them a lot other than in professional theater, but they do definitely work. For tap dance numbers, they're very helpful because they pick up that sound better than like trying to stick a little microphone to the actor's shoes. Then this is the most common thing. We actually have a lot of these. We tend to do it on their cheek as opposed to through their hair like this woman. But that is a lavalier mic. That's basically just, it goes all the way up and sticks here. And then there's a whole wire that goes all the way down their back into a mic pack that they attach to a belt clip or in a pouch somewhere, or that they can just like kind of hang on their undergarments or something. And that's just how to get the batteries to power that microphone. So no mic is truly wireless. There is always a wire that's connecting it to some sort of power source or a battery. Okay. So then there's the soundboard. That's what we use to control the whole system. Our soundboard at Lowell is digital. It doesn't look quite like this, but they're very similar. And it's either digital or analog. Analog soundboards are becoming less and less common. We tend to have digital everywhere. You're not going to have to learn how to use an analog soundboard. I really hope that someday you do get to learn to use our soundboard when we go back to school, which right now doesn't seem like that far off. But I do think that you're going to get to know the soundboard. The soundboard's really fun. We use the soundboard for all events. So even if it's just like one person giving a lecture at Lowell, and they've come into the Carroll Training Theater to give that lecture, we hook them up with a microphone and a soundboard. So in general, for every event, the people that we would need to run it are a soundboard operator and a light board operator. And after you learn how to use either of those things, you're good to go basically to help out at any event. So once we teach you those, you can come to any event and help us out, which would be great. But what if you need sound effects? How will I get all these sound effects? Mandy, take it away.
So, first, actually, I'm going to bring up the project we're doing for sound. You will be taking this kind of 30 seconds, maybe less, maybe a little more of a clip, either from a book, if you have a script, maybe, or something, and kind of creating the environment that that clip is from, which I have an example from my freshman year. I would do it differently if I could do it again, but that's what I have to show you guys. We're gonna go to Soundtrap, is a website. I'm gonna share my screen now. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna play you um the example first. See, mine is only about 50 seconds. It doesn't have to be very long. It's personally one of my favorite projects that we've done. But yeah, let's hear that. Wait, to log on to this website, you should already have an account with SFUSD. So if you just log in with your student account, should be, unless they changed it this year, but I still have access, so it should be okay. If you have problems logging on, email me. I can try to walk you through it. If not, I think Bianca is willing to screen record a video to show you how to do that. Okay, let's try this again. And for 2 weeks, Ti-Moon did wait at the gate. Not eating, not sleeping, only waiting, only watching as the grounds of the Hotel Bazome were made even more lovely in preparation for the wedding. And at last, Andrea and Daniel were married, and as superstition dictated, they came to the gates of the hotel to throw coins to the peasants, thus assuring that their own fortunes would multiply. Daniel! And the gods began to cry, tears of compassion for the orphan Ti-Moon, who proved that love could withstand the storm and cross the earth and survive even in the face of death. Okay, did that audio go through?
Yes.
Yes.
So, everyone, essentially, it's a like a dramatic reading of a book or a script that you are going to add 5 sounds into. So that's 5 sound effects. Mandy will walk you through how to do that. But you get to choose any part of any book. Just let us know. You can work in a group, although we would, we could probably want to limit those groups to like 2 or 3 people if you want to. So if you have any like friends in this club that you were like, yeah, I want to work with them, feel free to just let us know. And you'll be doing 5 sounds. The minimum length of your clip has to be 30 seconds just to get those 5 sounds in. So, in this clip from Once on This Island that Mandy just played, there were like applause sounds when the people got married, and all this other kinds of things. So that's kind of what we're expecting from you guys as well.
Also, for the dramatic readings, you're not being tested on how good of an actor you are. I mean, if you want to, you can go for it, but,
Okay. Yeah, it's, I would definitely redo some things. Not my best work, but actually I'm gonna make a new project and just walk you through how to kind of use Soundtrap. Enter Studio, which is loading. My internet is not. Okay. I don't know how well music works, but I think podcasts gives you more like freedom to do what you want. You can try using music if you want, but I've only used podcast. And I think because we're reading it, I don't think you really need the music either. So to start recording, add tracked. There's a lot of stuff you can do. I mean, if you really want to go ahead and compose a soundtrack for this, you can go ahead, but just to record your voice, start recording. I guess I can, hi, I am recording. Okay, that will go on there. For recording voice and narration, I recommend kind of using something and then putting like a blanket over you, or going in like literally in a closet with all the clothes around you, which will hopefully muffle out all the sound. I think what I did when I did that last year was I think I just spoke into my phone and I was too close. You can hear when it's like it's too close and it's not working that well, but I've noticed when I'm recording for other things, if you just kind of huddle like over with a blanket, it works kind of to muffle everything out. So you can try that. You can just record like this. Um, so that's whatever it is, you know, you can edit it. You can edit the name, which can fade in, fade out. I guess you can reverse it if necessary and change all the pitch and everything. I think the thing, if you press on it, it turns darker where this is, you know, splitting it up. So I'm splitting it there. I can move it to some other part of the recording, which might be necessary, or you can duplicate it. Let me press this. Wait, am I pressing this right now? Hold up. Down here's the duplicating the track. So if you need, when I did the coin recording, that was literally me just dropping coins on my table. And I just duplicated that track a bunch of times to get, you know, the same sound over and over to sound like a lot of coins, and deleting and for freezing and importing tracks, which if you want to say record it on your phone, then bring it to your computer, just import it. But for sound effects, this is where it gets cool. I have not used much of it. Hold on. I just wanna, this is not what I wanted to do. Where is, oh, loop library, that's what I was looking for. So sounds, I was looking at, let's say I wanted, I don't know, cow. Is there cows? There's cowbells. There's a lot of other things. There's a cow mooing, which if I wanted to insert that, if I wanted to insert that into my recording, there's a bunch of sound you can use here, you know, sound effects. There are, I guess, beats, which apparently somehow relate to cows. But I think that's the cool thing about this. It's just you can move around your recordings a lot, and you can definitely play around with different soundtracks and sound effects, which it's, I think if you use it more and kind of play around with it, it starts to make more sense. It's pretty easy to use. I have less trouble with this than like iMovie, which is also pretty easy to use. So, and if you really, really want to like get super, super technical on it, there's tutorials here. I think they have a YouTube channel somewhere, which I will send to Bianca to link into the emails. But yeah, play around with it. It's pretty easy to use. It's fun to use. I've done other things on there if you saw earlier. Yeah, I don't, are there other things I could, that might, oh, this is okay. This kind of, okay, now this is, you can't hear this. If I had another recording on here, which I do not at the moment, then you can focus on this specific, I guess, row, this specific sound, and then edit that without having everything else over it. And that's always very helpful. This is the volume, which I thought was really annoying the way they designed it, but this, just point up, the volume is now, that this track is now louder than the other one if you want to adjust the volume. I'm not 100% sure what this is, but play around with it. Check out the tutorials if you want, but it's pretty easy to use, and it's gonna be fun. Okay, how do I? Soundtrap.